we assumed responsibility for the country 2 years ago, I emphasized we had a very challenging path ahead. I made it clear that these problems could not be resolved within a week, a few months, or even a year. Using the metaphor from the play The Caucasian Chalk Circle, I illustrated that we had to navigate a precarious journey across a metaphorical fallen vine bridge over a terrifying, bottomless chasm. How has that journey been thus far? In democratic societies, elected officials are expected to fulfill their campaign promises and serve the public during their tenure. We're looking for continuous accountability, which promotes integrity, transparency and responsiveness and deters misconduct and complacency. Now, we're looking at two key elections that are coming up. How important is it to ensure that there are adequate checks and balances between the three organs of government, the executive, legislature and judiciary? Tonight's topic of discussion will focus on just that, the separation of powers. How does it go beyond a mere theoretical construct? There is so much political melodrama that we're living through day in, day out. So let's have the conversation. I'm so pleased to welcome to the studio Mr. Upul Jayasuriya, President's Counsel, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, Good Governance Activist, Nadishani Pereira, Executive Director, Transparency International Sri Lanka, and Mr. Manjula Gajanayaka, Executive Director of IRES, also an election observer. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the program. I'm also pleased to welcome our two journalists, Shihar Anees, Executive Director, Center for Investigative Reporting, and Niresh Eliathambi, Consultant Director, Newsfirst. Without any further ado, I'd like to move to Mr. Chandra Jayaratne for your opening remarks. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I think you talked about the first speech that the President made on assuming office. Because of that, I had looked at his speech in Parliament in August 2022 and looked at what he has done, what he said then and what he has done. Firstly, he said he has come there with a majority of the trust of majority of the members of Parliament. Half of those who were there are now in the opposition. Then he was talking about rice being exported, granary of the East. We are importing from onions to everything else and we can't feed our people. We have had continuing problems. He talked about Parakrama Bahu and that how he's going to do to create a green economy with saving water. I haven't seen any new irrigation works. Rains are coming, water's wasted, another broken promise. He said he's going to rekindle the middle class. Middle class is dying today. Middle class, if you take, is dying today because of taxes, costs, and inability to function. He said he's going to make rules and regulations that allow the country to get maximum benefits from the Indian Ocean economic power. We are hearing lots of dreams, but I have not seen anything that is not within the realms of not being not transparent, something that has really come to light. National economic policy for the next 25 years. We've seen some. We can talk about it later. His two bills, and they are full of holes. In my second round, I will touch upon them. He said the underprivileged groups and small and medium entrepreneurs will be supported. They are dying. They are closing up. 24-hour dedicated lifeline for complaints, those who struggle and advocate in streets. They are only receiving water treatment and nothing else. Can go on. He promised about women facing harassment. For the first time in history in Sri Lanka, to my knowledge, we have seen a gang rape a few days ago. And combating bribery and corruption. I think Nadishani will probably talk more about it. And finally, he promised a People's Assembly who's going to prepare the national plan. Where is this People's Assembly is going to take things from? So to me, it has been 2 years of a political circus where master puppeteer is performing behind the stage, and within the circus you see animals being whipped into place. They can't do what they want. Trapeze artists are doing things under nets. So people are looking at that and forgetting the risks they themselves are facing in the economy and in the country. There are clowns going around offering tricks for tricks and treats. And that's what the clowns around the puppeteer is doing, tricks and treats. And unfortunately, the human suffering has increased over the 2 years, malnutrition to everything else. And everything else that he has been said in the past 2 years, there is a contradiction or a real risk behind his promises.
Thank you, Mr. Jayaratna, for your very somber opening remarks. Ms. Upul Jayasuriya, Mr. Jayaratna paints a very stark picture. Do you also concur, or do you have a different opinion?
Let me have a different approach about this topic, and also from the explanation that you gave at the beginning. You said that we are discussing this particularly in view of the two impending elections that are possibly going to be held in this year. As far as that is concerned, my memory goes back to the local government elections that were to be held before, I think, sometime in March last year. And there was a case that was filed, and interim order was granted to prevent the Treasury Secretary from not spending the budgetary allocation of the funds that have been allocated so far for the local government election. Then what happened was, in the parliament there was a matter that was matter of privilege that was raised by a member of parliament, and another deputy minister said that urged the court not to implement the order that had been issued by them until such time the parliament goes into it. And this was some news that shocked the entire legal community, not only in Sri Lanka but also overseas. All the bodies like the Law Asia, the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, the UN, then the IBA, International Bar Association, and all, including local bodies like the Bar Association and so on, they issued statements. What happened? Without the court having to do anything, that was a total threat that was posed on the judges. They did not allocate the monies. But the matter was taken up finally before a bench of 5 judges. And that is what shocks me even further. The Attorney General, represented by a very senior officer, took up the position of the complaint that we were making, and then the relief that we were asking was for the holding of the election. Now he comes to court and they said this election commission has done this wrong, that wrong, the other one wrong. Now that is not something that we asked for. That is not something that they said in their limited objections. Now they are finding fault on something else. This is something like in Sinhalese you call it Yanne Koheda Malle. The Attorney General taking up this position. And this is the same Attorney General who was sought to be given extension. We are talking about gender equality. No one has so far mentioned one word about who would have been deprived of the next promotion to be the Attorney General. We are talking about gender equality. Are you aware that the next person who should take that seat is a lady? It's not every day that a lady will get the chance of becoming the Attorney General of this country. If she becomes the Attorney General, she will be the second lady Attorney General. Mrs. Ayesha Jinasena. She has been there for more than 35 years, and she, if she is appointed, will have about another 6 months to go on. But we are talking about gender equality. But she is to be deprived of a due promotion. So, be that as it may, now coming back to the same election, now we are going to have now 2 more elections. All that the Attorney General will have to do is to go, we can't give money because the election commissioner issued this wrong gazette notification or some stupid thing like that. Is this the kind of conduct or the role that we expect to be played by the Attorney General of this country? Definitely not. So we are in for real troubled times as to what ought to happen. Then, in the background of all that, we have, as my friend Chandra raised the matter that was said by the President in the Parliament, when he takes up that kind of a criticism on the judiciary, then there are three others to follow suit. The Minister of all the people, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Education, then another Member of Parliament. If this is the kind of attitude and the respect that they have for the apex court of this country and also for the other judiciary, particularly knowing very well that these members of the judiciary have no right of reply. I mean, it's the basic thing that whenever we go to court and then argue, the basic thing that we argue is to hear both sides, audio alteram partem. Hear both sides, knowing very well that one party cannot be heard. And facts are totally distorted. I'll bring out those facts in the next round. Totally distorted. And it's a pack of lies that was said. Pack of lies. If he said that outside the Parliament, he would have been taken to task. But he was careful not to say it outside the Parliament, but he said it thinking that he enjoys a parliamentary privilege within the presence of the Parliament. This is not what we expect from a senior member, one-time Bar Association President, and of all the people, the Minister of Justice. I can only think of one Minister of Justice who was making that kind of moves. That was none other than Mr. Felix Das Bandaranaike in the 1970s. But this is even worse. Take even Rajapaksas. Not that I have any compliment for them. The case in which they were found to have violated the rights and then made this country go bankrupt. 4 judges held that they are responsible, the 3 brothers and several other people, including the Monetary Board. The 3 Rajapaksa brothers did not say, I am ignoring this judgment. 3 Rajapaksa brothers did not say, go to hell, throw it to the dustbin. They didn't ask the public to ignore that judgment. No. At least I must give the devil his due. They accepted the ruling. They didn't try to fight back on that. They made a small lie here and there saying that no, we are going to take it up in another forum and all that, knowing very well that there is no other forum. That's another matter. But he never went to the extent of saying, ignore this judgment. Now that is something to be noted.
Thank you very much. Nadishani, the bleakness of the mood continues with the opening remarks.
Well, yes, sadly, it's difficult for me to think of a positive thing to say. However, I would just like to continue this, but mainly looking from the point of view of my subject matter focus is corruption. I think the democratic framework in this country is facing a grave threat. And just to simplify, because certain terms we take for granted in our work, sometimes I think for our listeners, I'm just simplifying what we keep on talking about, the separation of power. So in a democratic framework, the country is run, there are 3 main institutions, the executive, the legislature and the judiciary. And now these 3 institutions have 3 distinct roles. Right, and the legislature, often we forget their role because we don't often see them doing this role but doing everything else. But their role is to make laws, keep the legal system updated. And the second one is, of course, they are in charge of public finance, right, to provide oversight. And then now when they make laws, then the executive has to implement these laws. They have to then come up with policies, and then you have the public sector under the executive. They have to implement this. And then you have the judiciary. Now the judiciary is there to protect the rights of citizens if the legislature or the executive, if they breach these rights. It's to be the guardian of the rights of the citizens, and also to provide a check and balance in terms of the abuse of power by the legislature in terms of judicial review of bills. Now, unfortunately, we don't have judicial review of legislation. When something is passed as law, you're stuck with it in this country. Certain countries do have that. But we have a very limited time to challenge when the law is still a bill. So that is one way, because the court is supposed to look whether the law that the legislature is attempting to pass is in line with the Constitution. And then it's a very important point to remember is that nobody in this country is above the Constitution. Right? We say constitutionalism. Not even the legislature. Yes, they might be the ones coming together and passing a particular constitution, right? Constitutional amendments. So we had all these amendments. However, after it is passed, we all have to bow down to the supreme law of the nation. And then, so judiciary has that role to protect the citizen. If the executive is breaching their rights, we know, for example, let's say a torture case, and a particular public institution, a public official is torturing a citizen, where do people go? They can, if their rights are recognized in the Constitution, no one can be tortured. So you can go and file a fundamental rights application. So now abuse of power for abuse of entrusted power for personal gain is the very basic, universally accepted definition of corruption. Let me say it again, entrusted power. Now, if you take the executive president, if you take the legislature, if you take the public sector, the ministers, amount of power we are giving them. When we give them the vote, they are able to come up with laws that have implications on our public resources, on our lives. Sometimes whether somebody lives or die, trickles down to a decision that has been made, and about our resources, which are not sometimes irreplaceable or will take generations to come up again. We have this wonderful little island, but limited resources. So we have the people, when we vote in this democratic framework, we give them such a lot of power. However, it is never to be used for their personal gain. In fact, this is what, like President Council said in the Supreme Court judgment, but judges said when they held those parties accountable for the economic crisis, is that they violated the public trust doctrine. Basically, that means that these officials and politicians, they hold public resources in trust for the people. They are only stewards. They are not the owners. So then, but in a simple, if you take human nature, wherever there is power concentrated, there is the tendency to abuse it. That's why we all need control system. Our organization needs control systems because as human beings, the power is very, very seductive. Power will attract you. No one after getting the power wants to let go of power. It's one of those things that human nature is very vulnerable to. And hence why the system has to be in place, that there are controls so that you cannot, even if you have a little idea to abuse, you are not allowed because somebody is having a check and balance on you. Now, what the President has done here is that the judiciary has done their role in reviewing a bill and saying that it has these issues in terms of how constitutional it is. And they have done their part. Now, if the executive president says that we need to disregard this needs to be thrown out, you are saying that you're basically disregarding that function. In fact, it really doesn't matter to us or to anyone what he thinks of the Supreme Court judgment or determination. It doesn't matter. You are bound by it. You cannot say, no, we are now going to appoint a committee. You are intimidating, you are creating a chilling effect. There are other bills on which we have gone to the Supreme Court. There are other critical cases that are pending with the Supreme Court. They are normal human beings like us. These judges, how would they feel when they are being slandered like this by the highest authority in this very, very serious way, using very, very, very serious words in Parliament? You're creating, they will be wondering, why do I have to get into this mess if I give a judgment? So this is how you're trying to take away that role. You're taking away the separation of this power and abusing power. So this is how I see is it is corruption, because you are abusing that power you're having. You're also abusing the parliamentary privileges, and you're violating the fundamental structure. And my last point is, citizens who are listening might think, this doesn't affect us. It's some big story about a law and whatever. But one day you or I will need to go to court. And our rights are violated. That day, the court needs to have the independence to hold your rights, stand up for your rights, and hold the official accountable. So we all need it. So we should be very, very cautious when somebody tries to take away that separation.
All right, thank you very much, Nadishani Pereira. You specifically alluded to the recent incident where the Supreme Court made a determination on the gender equality bill, which was effectively thrown out. And there were certain comments made by the executive president with respect to the Supreme Court determination on this gender equality bill. I'd like to move to Manjula Gajanayak for your opening remarks now.
Yeah, this time actually that your theme is so important and timely in this period, because we know that globally there will be more than 64 national elections in global context, as well as actually, as you mentioned correctly, we are heading to major 2 elections. But I know that that we can understand that if someone win, I mean, who is the winner, actually he will conduct other disappeared elections also, both of provincial councils and local government. That is my viewpoint. So that the separation of powers refers to the idea that the major institution of state should be functionally independent, and that no individual should have powers that span these offices. That is the main thing. Then in this regard, in between that, actually there are 2 more important concepts. That is the matters constitution and rule of law. But we know that as Sri Lankans, actually, that we are always that we are not respecting constitutionalism in Sri Lanka, in the country. As a country, we know that what was happened in 26th October in 2018. Okay, there was a political crisis, conspiracy. Okay, at that time, luckily, judiciary was fair at that time. Okay, then and other cases, actually, that in that case, actually, related to that, I would like to add, I mean, something special in this discussion. Okay, now. In terms of judges, actually, their rights, and that all 3 speakers actually were talking on the rights of judges and the impartiality of the judiciary and so on. Then, as an average citizen, actually, let me to ask the very simple question. You know that when someone violating the, I mean, if they are thinking actually violating their own rights as judges, actually, there's a law that they can use that contempt of court. Okay. If there are something happening unfair that to the parliamentarians, actually, they can use parliamentary privileges. Okay, right now Parliament Powers and Privileges Act available there. Okay, then what about us? If something happened to citizens, what will happen? Actually, where we can go? Okay, that is the most important question that we should ask. As average citizens, actually, they have more avenues to go. But as a simple, I mean, as an average citizen, actually, there's no more rooms to protect our own rights. Therefore, I would like to include some of specific 2 cases. The one thing is actually it is very important that you may remember the public trust doctrine. accordingly, that there was a wonderful case delivered in 2008, that the Watersage case. Okay, in that case, in that landmark judgment, Justice Shirani Tilkawardena said, Kumartunga had failed to function in a manner consistent with the expectations of a public officer, much less an executive president, and in doing so had completely betrayed the position of trust bestowed upon her by the constitution and by the people of Sri Lanka. Okay, but as Mr. Jayasuriya correctly said, actually, when delivered that judgment, actually there was no against, actually they accepted it, as well as that what he mentioned also. But right now what we saw, that our Honorable Justice Minister, that not only his speech, his body language also, actually we can't understand how he acted like that, criticizing the judges at that time in the parliament, because the thing is, he was talking about that in the time that some of decisions not favorable to him. That is the question. Okay, my last point is that the executive president, we know that actually he believes more gimmicks and not the ballot. That's the most important thing right now. That's why he's always criticizing not only judges, actually election commission and other institutions also. But what I can understand, actually, that in the 1982, that you know that our first and one and only referendum held in 22nd December 1982. At that time also, his uncle also did the same thing. He appointed Mr. Neville Samarkon as the Chief Justice at that time. They blamed justice at the judges at that time. Now, not only that, actually, there was heated debates in Parliament. But luckily, Mr. Neville Samarkon, as Chief Justice, he delivered a very fair judgment at that time. There was a heated argument on the 4th Amendment related to the referendum in 1982, but actually at that time, actually, we know that Chief Justice performed well. But unfortunately, right now, the problem is, as citizens, what we believe, we need to abolish the executive presidency in Sri Lanka. Otherwise, I don't think that we have any other alternative.
All right, thank you very much for the opening remarks. Before moving to our journalists, I have a question for Mr. Upul Jayasuriya, President's Counsel, and I'd like to phrase it in this manner. Mr. Jayasuriya, human fallibility, none of us are gods, so we are susceptible to the seduction of power. In this context, where we know that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, we require checks and balances, and we require systems in place so that there is no usurpation of power, which is why we have the separation of powers doctrine. Over the recent few months specifically, we've seen several disturbing, distressing instances where this doctrine of separation of powers has been blatantly disregarded with respect to the relationship between the executive president and the independent constitutional council. With respect to appointment of the Inspector General of Police, the Attorney General, Supreme Court judges, the most recent incident of the determination pertaining to the Gender Equality Bill. These are very dangerous precedents that we're seeing before our eyes. How do you make sense of this?
There's no sense. It makes no sense at all. So what is happening, you have eloquently detailed out what has been happening. The question is, how are we going to put a stop to it? That is the only problem. There should be democratic governance in the country. The people and the political parties all should be there to protect the constitution, as was said by Nadishani, and at least show some elements of decency in doing whatever they are doing in the parliament. I mean, all what you require is not the high fluent knowledge of the Constitution. Some level of decency should be there and demonstrated by those people who are sitting in those chairs and then having free meals day in and day out. Now, do we have that? Now, the thing is, take the Minister of Justice. Now, as was said here, he has been getting order after order after order against him in some matter in the district court. Well, if he's not satisfied with those orders, the next option that he has is to go to the next level of the appeal, maybe the civil appellate court, maybe from there to the Supreme Court. So there is a option that is available to you. You must make use of the option. Without making use of the options that are there, I'm not saying that the judges are gods. We call them lords, yes, of course, in the superior court. But judges are not infallible. They are also human beings. They can genuinely take a view which is not agreed upon by one party. Of course, there are two parties to a case. In such a situation, that is why the appeal process is provided for. Without going through that, you make use of the parliamentary privilege, you go there and then lacerate the judiciary and those particular individuals. That is not done. No way can that be tolerated. I mean, in a civilized society, if the people who are making such statements are civilized, they should not be making those statements. There is no check and balance. It's your own conscience that has to speak, that has to take over your mouth and guard your mouth. And I'm also shocked with another aspect of it. When he was making all those derogatory statements on the judicial officers, what were the other MPs doing? You know, no judge can be criticized in the parliament without a substantive motion. If he's a Supreme Court judge, if you are going to criticize his decision or whatever his conduct, there were several times there were impeachments brought. You must bring a substantive motion. So how did the Speaker allow him to make the statement and continue to make the statement? It's not just 5 minutes, just by the way, some few words that came out of his mouth. I'm also appalled by the other members of Parliament from the other parties, not only the ruling party but also the opposition party. What were they doing? Why didn't they raise this objection? Hey, you can't take up that thing, you can't say that with regard to the judge. Did anyone raise that? No one. That is the sad part of it. Yeah. I'm saying, irrespective of any political parties, whichever, whoever, they had a duty to say that. Nobody said it. We are talking about it in public fora and maybe other legal circles, maybe other academic circles. We are all talking about it. What we are talking, didn't they realize it? They are the lawmakers. We are the public. We are just watching them doing it. Yeah. This circus, it goes on. So this is a circus that goes on, and we have to tolerate it. Now, that's a short answer to give. There's a lot of the examples that can be brought up, but I don't think I'll be taking too much of time from you on that.
Yeah, Mr. Jayaratna, I want to ask you now, you seem to have lost confidence and lost hopes, right, from what you have told. I mean, what's the best alternative you see in terms of power separation, in terms of all three branches of the governance? What is the best alternative do you see for a prosperous Sri Lanka?
Well, one thing is that the abolition of the executive presidency. Now, most of these things that have not been done are because the executive president and his powers are impinging upon all these institutions and our rights and obligations that they owe to us. Now, he promised a social justice commission to look after what he said was the foundations of benefits being equally distributed. Now, I haven't heard that after that August 22nd speech. Then, more importantly, he said the law will be applied to people equally. Now, is the law being applied to equally by the law enforcement agencies? I mean, every day when you look at the newspapers, some are better than the others. Some have carried on for years with the whole world knowing that they are not properly appointed. So therefore, we need a system where like a parliament, where you can question the person. He's accountable to individuals, very specifically if there's a certain amount of elected. Now these elected representatives also represent a whole district, and there is no accountability to individual units that they can need to. So I think a parliamentary system of governance with two things. One of them is the powers of the judiciary to review legislative things, and most importantly, in the enforcement, look at India. I mean, there may be some political issues there. There's an enforcement directorate of India, right? And they have got all powers beyond. They can question anybody, take anybody in, and we have seen some very, very significant findings, enforcement of money laundering, things like that. So the rule of law must prevail, and judiciary must also look after. I'll give you one example today. The judgment that was talked about November 17th last year, the judgment on the economic crisis. In the judgment, there is one important sentence that people died in the queues, and the police have confirmed that there are 9 names have been given, 16 people have been reported in the media having died in queues, but we have got names of 9 people. On their behalf, we asked the Ministry of Finance, you all know the economic consequences, you all are doing everything to alleviate people's suffering. What are you going to do? They said, we do not know about anything. This is not a part of what the Finance Ministry has to do. Attorney General says he does not know about this judgment. Now that is very strange. He appeared for the government, and then we went to the Reparations Commission. Reparations Commission says it's out of our mandate. And finally we have gone to the Human Rights Commission, and they have also said it's outside their mandate. The only thing we may be having to do is to take this to ICCPR or outside the country and take it out. Why should we take these issues outside? We should have the rule of law, justice available. So I think, to me, one thing which is missing is we do not have people who care for the country and its people, very especially those who are not having the capacity to hold themselves, the marginalized community. Remaining people in marginalized communities helps the people to grab power. From the day, the last 2 years, to my mind, has been worked towards getting their term extended. And that's what everybody has done. So I think we need a total systems change, as people asked, whereby we have a parliamentary system, accountable to the people. Now let's take another case. Some of these institutions that have been privatized. So I'll give you 2 examples now that I got the chance. One is Sri Lankan Airlines. The whole world has paid, Airbus has paid compensation for bribes given here, but in this country the case has taken, it's not heard. Where the files are, we don't know. Right? Now there's another power connected institution which is been privatized. The amount of files that are there in it is known to the people who prepared those files. Now, if this is what is happening, whilst he said that equal justice will be given, including the people who suffered under the Easter Sunday bombing, what has been done? So we really need people who care, are accountable. And I think above all, we the citizens are responsible for just accepting without a fight. So I think we need a more active polity outside of the executive legislator who holds them accountable.
Nadishani, let me ask you, the legislature, that's parliament, makes the laws. the executive, which is the president and cabinet and others, they apply the law. The judiciary, the courts, interpret the law, and within the judiciary, it is the Supreme Court which is supreme. And beyond that, there is no fourth arm which is in this. It's the legislature, executive, judiciary. So when the Supreme Court decides something, it's supposed to be final.
Yes.
That's why the operative word is supreme. There is no not so supreme, little supreme, So if the Supreme Court, according to the powers that be, if the Supreme Court is not supreme and is to be questioned by Parliament and the President and by others, hasn't governance been turned into a circus here?
Yes, it is. And this is a classic example of what we term as, in corruption concepts, we call this state capture. So state capture is a very serious, very grave form of corruption that can happen in a country where a particular group that is having the power, and when I say group, not only politicians, it's what we usually call a kleptocracy. So that is basically this group that will have very some obvious politicians, senior politicians, some senior public officials, some companies. Then they also have enablers. The enablers means the lawyers, the accountants, the auditing organization, financial institutions, bank, real estate agents, etc. And of course, they normally have a connection with the criminal network. If somebody is annoying them, they need to have a way of silencing them also. So now then, when this group that is having power becomes so powerful that they are able to bring laws, get rid of laws and policies in a country just to help themselves. It doesn't benefit the country. They are that powerful. When they are able to control the organs of the state, the public institutions, you realize it's just doing somebody's agenda, not their role, not what they are supposed to do for the people. So it's when the legislature is just like our puppets raising their hands for whatever the executive president wants. I mean, normal citizens today say, no, I mean, after it goes to parliament, that's it. Before that only we can stop. After it goes to parliament, we know the result. We know the result. Should that be the case if the parliament is having our representatives? Should that be the case? Is that what we wanted when we sent them to parliament? That they are going to act against our interests and we have to be scared of them? That they will only do what the president wants or what their party wants? So what we see now, back a few years back when the sugar scam happened, we took it as a smaller example to show how state capture operates, because there you saw that taxation was brought in and then removed, and some friends benefited. The country lost billions of money. And now you see, I mean, the whole structure has got stuck and the executive is overreaching. The executive arm is overreaching. And so one organ in this that was struggling to somehow do their role, and where we had some hope, like the judgment last year, to go, was this court, right? Somehow we were still, that's the only place left to go. But now that also what is happening here, you are trying to make that very, very difficult for the judges, and also you are trying to conceptually confuse the people, which I find as a very serious, like Mr. Jazir said, it's a lack of, I don't know, decency, humanity, because the higher positions we get, the higher, more educated you are, the more experience you have, the more senior you are, the more authority you have, the more responsibility you have. You have a human duty. You are up there. You are speaking with such authority. You have the most powerful man in the country. And here are all these people who don't know anything about law, normal people listening, and you're twisting the entire principles. You're confusing them. Now we are trying to untangle this here, right? Because you are saying that they had no duty to write a judgment like this. We should disregard it. That is conceptually wrong. Like I said, it doesn't matter what you think. The judgment is final. It's up. You need to adhere to it. See the online safety law. Now we have gone to court, so I'm not going to say what should be, but why we went to court was because, again, the Supreme Court, that was one of the bills where the largest number of petitions were filed to challenge the bill. And then the Supreme Court, in its determination, prescribed a whole lot of changes. Almost, I think 90% of the sections had to be amended to make it constitutional. But the version, as per the information we have, the version that was passed, finally signed by the Speaker, does not contain all those changes. No, so that was a very problematic situation, because what's the point in us or in having the provision for people to go to the Supreme Court, for Supreme Court to review a bill and give a determination, if that can be completely ignored, and the legislature can do. And even if so, if they want to do that, there is a provision in our constitution, then it has to be a 2/3 majority. You can't go with a simple majority ignoring that. So you didn't do that either. So now that has to be determined. Now we have set that precedent. That's a bad example. Now on top of that, you are again trying to throw away, this determination. You are bringing a whole host of laws. We have no breathing space trying to review these laws. And it is sad to say that some of these laws that look very holy and beautiful, and they are in line with the IMF requirement of strengthening public finance, strengthening this and that. When we start reviewing it, and trust me, you have to go section by section, and you need to think like a Sri Lankan who knows how corrupt the Sri Lankan system is when you're reviewing it. And we do it as an institution, and it takes a lot of time and resources. You see devious sections, very maliciously squeezed into that. And all the purposes of these sections have been to enable grand corruption. You give this nice little loophole for people to continue business as usual. Again, you're abusing your legislative power, and again, to challenge that, the only place where we can go, Supreme Court. And then now you're threatening that. So this is a very serious situation, and I think the citizens, first of all, we discuss what can be done. And I understand that legally these people are allowed to be in parliament until the next election. So the real thing that can be done would be, it's the people's court, what we say. It's when their term ends, people have to elect, no? So it's very important that people understand what is happening right now. And they are trying to confuse the people. So there's a very big role, by the way, Sonali, for the media institutions as well, to unravel this confusion, to set the principles straight. Tell the truth. You can't ride a country on a lie, and face the truth. If you are saying you're for economic reform, and that is your priority, a fundamental condition for the economic reforms to be just and equitable is to create the enabling environment for people to participate in the process. No, first of all, you have to win their trust, and then if you have to have right to information, freedom of expression. If they want to object, if they want to critique, because if you're doing this for the country, you won't be scared. You'll be very proudly sharing the bills. Here we had to RTI and write letters and put public press releases and do all sorts of things to get the bill. And once it comes, there are all these malicious provisions inside. We have few days to run to court. They will put it also just before public holidays, and you know how we do. So we can continue this conversation, but it is a grave situation.
So you mentioned state capture.
State capture.
So our state has been captured.
Of course, yes. It has been captured by a kleptocracy.
Well, Jayashree, I want to ask this now. This is not the first time we see a president or a minister criticizing judiciary. We have seen this from JR's time, and also we have seen the executive basically controlling the legislature, right? So let's assume that time to time we have space to speak about this. In times we have seen under authoritarian government we don't have that rights also to publicly, basically the freedom of speech. Under these circumstances, how do you see to basically have a complete solution for this, right? Where you have separation of powers and you have appropriate and correct checks and balances.
For the checks and balances, I see a grave danger in this situation because, as we all know, we are not alone in this world. We are just one country out of nearly 200 other countries. We are also members of the United Nations. United Nations have promulgated its UN basic principles on the independence of the judiciary, mainly with two principles. I am quoting these UN basic principles from a statement that was issued by Law Asia with regard to a similar situation that arose when that member of parliament raised the privilege issue and then wanted to bring those three judges of the Supreme Court to be questioned by the select committee. The two principles are: the independence of the judiciary shall be guaranteed by the state and enshrined in the constitution or the law of the country. It is the duty of all governmental and other institutions to respect and observe the independence of the judiciary. 2. The judiciary shall decide matters before them impartially on the basis of facts and in accordance with the law, without any restrictions, improper influences, inducements, pressures, threats or interferences, direct or indirect, from any quarter or for any reason. And it is all there in the UN basic principles on independence of the judiciary. If we are definitely in violation of these basic principles. When we are in violation, these are the matters that will be taken up against us, the country, as at the UN resolutions when they have been tabled, and then we go around the world trying to canvass the votes of some African nations or whatever. But how are we going to justify our conduct if this is the way that we are treating the judiciary? Will the judiciary be free to express its own opinion hereafter on another bill that comes up for determination as to the constitutionality of the law? Because they will have to think of, my God, are we going to upset the parliamentarians? Are we going to upset the president? Are we going to upset the Minister of Justice? If that is the case, that's a doomsday of the civility of this country and the treatment that we would be expecting from other countries. No doubt, we will be named as a pariah nation. No doubt about that.
So what's the solution?
The solution is in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of the people. They say, "Bale tito mole ne, mole tito bale ne." So when these people are talking big when they are in the parliament, they must be given the proper treatment at the time when the people get the right to do it. I don't blame the people who are in the 225 people who are sitting in the parliament alone. I blame the people who have sent them to the parliament. They are oblivious of whatever happens. Not only we are talking in these groups, there are so many people, lawyer groups and Minister Chandra Jayaratna's group and the transparencies and so many other groups that are talking about it. But is the business community raising a finger on these issues? No. Why? Why are they not talking? Because they think whatever the next contract, whatever the next benefit that they are going to get, or whatever the tax benefit that they are hoping to get, will not be given to them if they raise their price.
They are the part of the kleptocracy.
They are the accused. The first accused in this is the business community. The small and medium enterprises, that's a different group of people. Now they have been hit. Now they have to survive. There's nothing called small and medium enterprises because you have to be small to become big. Right? So that's another area of discussion altogether. But what has happened? Lawyers are talking all the time. Bar Association is talking all the time. There are so many other groups, but I don't even see even the accountants group talking about it. Not the engineers, no one else. Now look at the situation. Where is the rule of law in this country? Recently we saw former governor, one-time former governor was indicted for the purchase of Greek bonds. When was the complaint made? In 2012. When was the indictment forwarded? In 2024, 12 years later. Is this the kind of rule of law that we are practicing in this country? People will be laughing their guts out. Then even this economic crash, we have also made a complaint to the Bribery Commission. Bribery Commission has sent us a letter saying that yes, we are going to entertain this complaint and then we are going to investigate this. Then they were asked to come. They went there. They said, we can't understand what you are trying to talk. Whom are you going to tell? They will take out another 10, 20 years. Is this the law that we want? Is this a respect for the governance principles that we expect in this country? That is why we are also proposing legal reforms with regard to any complaint to be made to the Bribery Commission or to the CID should be completed. Investigation should be completed within 3 months. 3 months, not more. But if the investigation is not completed within 3 months, then they can go to the nearest magistrate and then make a case and then get the maximum another 3 months. From the date of the complaint, the indictment, if so, should be forwarded within a matter of 1 year from the complaint. And if the issue is something more than 5 million rupees, not 500,000, not even 1,000 rupees where some cop is charged on the road taking 5,000, 5 million rupees and above, the cases should be taken up day to day. No postponements will be granted. And it should be before a trial at bar. Before a trial at bar, and the judges are not enough, get the judges who have retired on contract basis and then put them on a contract for 3 years.
So those are only in the books, right?
No, we are proposing them.
Ah, you're proposing.
We are proposing them. They are not in the books. They are not yet in the books. That is why we have to change the system. These are system change that people want. But some people have no idea what the system change should be. But we have, some of the group of lawyers, we have got together, we have identified. These are the areas that you have to change the system. Now see, take for instance the economic transformation bill that came in there. Now in certain areas it has expanded, the Schedule B that was there in the BOI law has now been expanded to say that any line agency given much more than what was there in the Schedule B, but there are a few more that can be added on. They say 15 days are given for them to decide the approval to be granted by that so-called line agency. CEB was not there, but CEB should be there. Like that, local government was also not there, but it should be there. So anyway, if they fail to give that decision within the 15 days, then it goes back to the Economic Commission. Economic Commission will have to take it up. They can't give the approval. They will have to take it up with the minister concerned. The minister concerned will have to take it up with the finance minister concerned. Then they have to decide. And without a time frame being given, they can now decide to go to the cabinet and get the approval. I mean, every investor, if you are going through this process, but with the time frame not being demarcated, that means you are opening the door again for corruption. You are opening the door for corruption. You are giving license to the minister to take a bribe. That's what has been happening. Take the strategic development law. What are the projects that have been approved under the strategic development law? The Steel Corporation, which was already there, and Shangri-La. That's all. That is all. Are they strategic development? Yeah. And so anyway, so you give the power to the minister, forget it. Why can't it be given to the Economic Commission if that be the case? Give them another 15 days and for them to decide and finish it off.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayasuriya. Manjula, I'd like to come to you with my next question. We're currently in a pre-election period. It's almost like a peacock's mating dance, and we're seeing multiple mating dances. I'd like to ask you, what is the added importance of ensuring these doctrines of separation of powers, rule of law, anti-corruption? Because you're someone, also as an election observer, who always talks about these concepts. But there's a massive disconnect between these theories and what's happening on the ground. And also, I'd like your opinions on this massive disconnect between those who have been elected into office and the citizens, because we can't as citizens be anti-state. We can't be anti-establishment, right? The people are supposed to work with the government. The government is also supposed to work with the people. But that's not what's happening now.
Yeah, it is true. The thing is actually, you know, that in Sri Lanka, that the last decade, what we are seeing in the postponement of continuous postponement of elections, as well as actually undermining democratic institutions intentionally by the executive president. That is the usual practice in Sri Lanka. When it comes to elections, that I would like to add a few salient points actually. The first one is that actually, you know, that even in today that Subaranchi, under the Subaranchi actually, that the president has requested the support of people, general public, for the election process actually. That we know that who was the person who control and postpone the election, okay? Maybe not the executive president, but when it comes to the separation of powers, actually he intentionally used almost all the executive level staff officers who are directly related to the electoral process, including the state printing corporation, okay? That is the main thing. Other thing is that actually he used that the media unit and other various entities, okay? Then now we know that the other thing is actually, you know, that you may remember that there's an ongoing parliamentary select committee established against the previous election commission. Why that parliamentary select committee has established? Because the punishment is that the thing is that the previous election commission tried to call conduct the elections because they call nominations. But after that actually, that the hilarious thing is, the fascinating thing is, so you know that there may be more than 13 or 15 parliamentary select committee members, parliamentarians are included in that parliamentary select committee. All are, except one person. There's a person, that member of parliament, Mr. Gamini Lokuge. Now he's not much active in politics actually, I know that. But all are the new, fresh parliamentarians, okay? In Sri Lankan history, actually it is first time appointed almost all the 90% of members into a parliamentary select committee to oversee the matters related to such a critical matter, okay? Now, actually that it is just like a threat, okay? Now election commission people, even I don't know what will happen, but actually it is an indirect threat to the election commission as well as all the officers who are trying to perform free and fair manner, okay? It is one thing. And the other thing is this whole scenario, but you know that in Sri Lankan context, actually we are not conducting elections under the caretaker government, okay? Even when conducting elections, actually there will be a cabinet can perform, as well as, I mean, all the ministries are performs, all the ministries, secretaries and officials and other institutions are under the cabinet, okay? Cabinet of ministers, okay? Then ministers of cabinet. Then the problem is actually that the indirectly again executive president can control those people against to fulfill his own wishes. That's the main thing. Then this always threat to the electoral process, because you know that in current situation also that there's an critical uncertain whether election the due elections also whether hold or not. Okay, it is in uncertain situation. You know, it is not. I mean, Sri Lanka, it is not such a country. We have conducted 74 elections since the franchise received in 1931. We have a great history, but unfortunately, all the positive aspects has been upside down because of this undue, I mean, the interference of executive president?
Now, Manjula, we, the public, are told that the courts are wrong. The Elections Commission is wrong. The opposition parties are wrong. Having provincial councils at all and elections to them is wrong. The local government bodies, the elections for that is wrong. In fact, having any elections seem to be wrong. There's a saying in Sinhala, Natanna Bari Minihata Polo. Does that sum it up?
No, not like that actually. The thing is, as Sonali mentioned at the beginning, the thing is that the role of public representatives, okay? I mean, there's a greater distinct in between the general public and those public officials. That's the main thing. Okay, if we can bridge that, I mean, closer if we can closer that distinctions. But unfortunately, we can't see such anyone taking such an effort to closer the gaps. Okay, then that is the main thing. Now, when it comes to the parliament, actually, then currently, I can give a prime example. What you asked earlier from Ms. Nadishani, actually, that if parliament is overruling a decision made by the Supreme Court, what will happen? Actually, you know that I can give a prime example. You may remember it's also related to the elections under the Yahapalana government in 1917. Okay, that they were try to table the specific bill called Provincial Council Amendment Bill. At the very first time, actually, they tabled only 2-page documents. Okay, and finally, actually, when it goes to the Supreme Court, it was 32 pages. Okay, due to that, as I remember, Mr. Sumantiran, actually, I mean, he intervened into this matter, but I think that Supreme Court didn't give a positive answer to that. After that, it was happened in 2017, actually under the Yahapalana government, because at that time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe wanted to postpone provincial council election. That's why actually he, at the beginning, under the 2-page document, what he was mentioned, to hold all the provincial council elections on the same day. Okay, but when it comes to the second reading of the parliament, okay, then included the women quota and other change in the electoral systems, that so on, many things, many matters, and at the end of the day, actually, it was a 32 pages document. Okay, then under the 20th amendment, Parliament, that they corrected their own mistake. But I am not pro 20th amendment. Maybe this is the only positive thing that we can see in the 20th amendment. According to the third subsection of the 78 Constitution, okay, they have added, I mean, under the 20th amendment, any amendment proposed to a bill in Parliament shall not deviate from the merits and principles of such bill. This is very important. But finally, you know, at that time, the fascinating thing is, at that time, the Mr. Speaker was Mr. Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena. He's the same person who signed the online safety bill without including those amendments made at the second reading. Okay, that is the situation here.
Mr. Jayaratna, I'd like to ask this next question from the point of view of identifying and recognizing the importance of engaging the bad guys. Because we can theorize and intellectualize the issues at hand, but we need to engage the bad guys. So there's a lot of intimidation, thuggery, political manipulation, new bills with problematic provisions being brought in a non-consultative manner, deal-making, bribery, all of that. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have the marginalized, impoverished populace that goes hungry, literally, that face multidimensional vulnerabilities, who are helpless and voiceless. My question to you is, when we as citizens adopt this overly critical approach of blackguarding the government, of course we do have recourse to other mechanisms through which we can ask for relief, but we are so disillusioned, so we don't really see the solutions. And on the other end, we have the bad guys who are laughing in our faces, saying, yeah, you can talk all you like. This is how it's going to go down. So what is the solution? Like, do you see a way out, or is this cycle just going to keep repeating itself, and are we just victims of it all?
Well, I think if you look at the last, some of the suggestions that came into the constitutional reforms earlier, some of them are very critical, which have been left out. First thing is the section 52 it must be amended to prevent some of this. Section 52 gives the minister power, Article 52 gives the power with the minister to make directions and control. He should only be making policy. If you look at any of that section was brought in, those two words were put in by Felix Das Bandaranaike, who had a problem with the secretaries of ministry. Secretaries are not the chief accounting officer because they are directed and controlled. That is one point. Second point that came up is in the New Zealand case, which was again recognized in the thing but not actually implemented, is that now today the committee stage, the same fellows are talking politics now. Committee stage is where you bring in the experts from the outside to join the parliamentarians. Okay, we join the bad guys. We argue with them in that fora. And then it's recorded. And if you find them going against the people's wishes, give you the economic transformation bill and the other bill, I give you two issues that I've had calls from people who are holding BOI approved projects. The question they are asking is, we were given a entitlement under a law called the BOI. Now we are a transitionary provision. We have to now rely upon the transitionary provision of this economic transformation bill, which has cancelled that. Now this thing is within a transitional provision. What is our position?
Yeah.
So nobody didn't think of it. Second contradiction is they're talking about a digital economy being the main. Now digital economy, they have brought in taxes. VAT is being paid. Income taxes are being paid. Now, what do you think they will do? Don't they realize that from home, you're a resident, you can have your company and your contract only you register the contract in Malaysia, right? And then all the money will go. The little bit that is coming to this country will be lost. That's number two. Number three is there in this bill, there are set targets, right? And is there not a danger that any new investor who comes in under this bill, if we do not reach any one of those targets which we have put in that thing, will go to the MEGA, right? Which is the we have signed under we are a signatory to MEGA agreement. There's a guarantee. Investment guarantee. They will call back the investment guarantee on the basis that we came and invested upon your giving primary these issues. If we have to pay all back? So there are lots of issues like this which are coming up. And in the same bill, there is about procurement, right? Now the best procurement things have come out today. About the 50 megawatt power project coming at 4.98 cents versus what the government is paying 8 point something to a. Here is a public transparent bid with competition bringing the lowest at 4.98, and we have got 9 cents or something, brought down to 8.73 as a special favor and giving it to somebody. Now, where is our chance of, we have to join them, we have to take all the steps in the legal courts or wherever that is there, and ultimately I think we'll have to even resort to what the Aragale did. Now, what will happen is, in my books, either we will go into a very soon into a second collapse, where we are going, or with a change of policy, we may have another revolution in this country very soon. So I think people are not, because they are being duped into thinking. So we have to join them, we have to debate them. If there is no opportunity, media must provide that opportunity to bring people to come out and say what they have to note. Because as somebody said, some of the people are not seeing. We are all, one last point, we are all talking about a primary balance, talking about revenue targets, but nobody is talking. IMF is also has failed. They are not talking about reducing expenses. The president goes somewhere, he rings and tells last week he went to Batticaloa and told the military to complete the church that was destroyed. So where is the military has all this. Wherever he goes, a road is not done, people protest to him, he calls the military and military is doing it. So there is a budget which is hidden from everybody, which can be used by the president. Isn't that an abuse of power? Why aren't we looking at our expenses? Everybody is talking about revenue raising and people are being taxed from Pankala to everything else, beyond some of them who can't afford it. And then we are also talking about the other parts of the income side, how to bring them in, but nobody is talking about. So I think the way that we can bring up is, like he said, there are, in that, if there's a major project, say over 500 million rupees, you are budgeting, or $5 million even, in this bill, I think there is a limit. There no limit is not stated, but it says over a certain amount of things they can give some special facility. If a special facility is given, will it be put first to the parliament with that the national economic and social benefits out of that project pays for the taxes and the concessions that are being given? So there are ways and means which the people can agitate and bring better accountability. And they are obviously not being done by the leaders for some reason. So I think either through a revolution, change of system, or change of governance, we can only pray that it will come before this country is poor and marginalized, get on the streets against everybody in the country.
Mr. Jayasurya, in many countries, in many democracies, people are elected to office. A president is elected to his office. A prime minister, a cabinet minister, a parliamentarian, they are elected, they take office. But in Sri Lanka, they come to power. Balaya is the singular word. Is there a fundamental psychological issue here with our entire society?
I think the power, the word must be read with the singular meaning of it. That's the power of the people. How? People, you have to sympathize with the people for those people who are getting into power. I think Chandra was also referring to the kind of transparency that is required for better use of the state funds and all that. I'll put it in another way. Corruption is the biggest issue. That's a cancer that is eating up our society under any regime. But this regime, at this moment of time, the corruption is at its peak. It's not millions, it's billions. Now, you may not have heard of a company called Lanka Transformers. Lanka Transformers is a company that was owned by the CEB, 63%. 23%, 67%. Sorry, 63%. 27% of that company was owned by ABB, a Norwegian company. 10% was given over to a
I'm the investigator on that particular one,
yeah,
so I will
I
not
don't want
know.
you to say it, but then I'm going to bring it to the fore very soon. 10% was given over to the ESOT, Employee Share Ownership Trust. Then Lanka Transformers has 8 companies, subsidiaries. One of the 8 companies, like Lakdanavi, has other 6 companies. They are taking contracts all over the world.
So it's a very giant company which was owned or is owned by the state, by the CEB, and therefore
Yes.
by the public.
Until yesterday. Until yesterday. When I say yesterday, I'll come to the story. It's a very important story that the public should know about this, because we are going to bring it up. Then what happened was, the 4 people in Lanka Transformers who are there working, they took over this ESOT, changed the name, changed the trust document, and took the trust property to a company. They got another loan and they bought the 27% from ABB, and 10% became 37%. They covered it from the employees, and then the 4 people are now owning 72% of this investment, of 37%. That's not the end of the story. Now recently what happened was, that I said yesterday, there's another company called West Coast Power. When you say West Coast Power, you might think that this is some foreign company. No, it is not. It is another company owned by Lakdanavi, which is owned by Lanka Transformers. West Coast had to be paid, as far as the CB is concerned, they had to be paid a bill of 26 billion rupees. 26 billion for the power supplied but not paid for. They said, we don't have money. We don't have money. Therefore, we are going to give you some shares of Lanka Transformers. 28% shares were transferred to West Coast. Now, West Coast is a subsidiary of Lakdanavi, which is a subsidiary of Lanka Transformers. This is in violation of Section 72 of the Companies Act, which says no subsidiary can buy shares of the parent company. Now, CEB ownership has now gone down to 35%. Now, these 4 people are owning 65% of the company. This company, I just told you that West Coast has come into operation only in incorporated only in 2021. Such an amount of money. If you take I don't think the share has been valued. Whether the minister has given the approval, whether the cabinet has given the approval, whether it has been tabled before the parliament, I don't know. I don't think so. So this is the level of corruption that goes on in this country. What are we doing about it? Is anyone interested about it? No. Then another thing happened. In 2019, a case was filed. Case was filed saying that these 4 people are robbing this company. The Government Auditor General has been prevented from inquiring into the accounts of the company. They must be provided, and they must be prevented from functioning as officers, and they are also the trustees of this original trust and also the directors of this now new company. All that was asked for by 3 people, and the first petitioner was a leading personality whose name I will not mention, leading personality who is the chairman of the anti-corruption, unit of that particular party, was the first petitioner. In 2019, came 2022, this was going on, nothing happened. 2022, he filed a further affidavit, that first petitioner and the other 2-3 people who were there as petitioners. No, we didn't know. At the time when we came to court in 2019, we didn't know that the CEB had been doing all the checks and balances. Now we are really satisfied that everything is tickety-boo. Everything is fine and superb. Beautiful picture. Therefore, we want to withdraw the application. Now, the Attorney General's Department, which usually comes and says there is no merit in this application and it must be dismissed in limine, the senior officer who came to court and said, no, this cannot be allowed. There is a huge problem. This is a public interest litigation. This must be gone into. He said that. But despite that, all his submissions were recorded in the order. Despite his raising the objection for the withdrawal of the petition, it was allowed. This is This is the situation that we are now placed in this country. I'm just giving you one example. There are so many like that. These are not millions, these are billions and billions in dollars. Billions in dollars, if you take their turnover from those 16, 17 companies, it's more than, I think, $10 billion. World over they are taking contracts. Where is this money going to? Some ministers have been oiled, their palms have been oiled. They don't raise cries about it. They don't go into these issues. It's beyond them. This is the problem that we are faced with in this society today.
Now, Dishani, one of your key areas of focus is anti-corruption. And this is really relevant when we speak about the separation of powers, because it is corruption that is sort of instrumental in blurring these lines. I'd like your perspectives on how we can mainstream anti-corruption, especially given the fact that now there is a new Anti-Corruption Act in place. Do you think that the effects of the Anti-Corruption Act can be experienced by the public at large, given that corruption is so deep-rooted in our society?
So, we need to work on the cultural aspect.
Correct.
We need to work on the system change aspect. Both. Because sometimes you might have a very progressive law, but if the culture is not prepared to accept that, it does fail. It's not easy. So it's parallel. Now, anti-corruption law is one instrument. It is now the main legal framework to fight corruption. But its impact, its effectiveness will depend on enforcement, implementation, where we are having many blocks. From who are the people who are manning, the commission, to the officers, do they have the space, the independence, are they also undergoing intimidation, do they have the resources, because we don't seem to be prioritizing these institutions. So when we are budgeting, we still give the biggest amount of money to the military budget, like we are in a war. And no wonder there are these secret pockets of money remaining. So basically, often if you take the Victim Witness Protection Authority, this is another subject. You need whistleblowers, because you need people who are going to blow the whistle about corruption. But then it can't be that after that they fear their lives. But you have authority, but when sometimes you try to work with these institutions and they say, when you are coming, bring a piece of paper, we don't have paper, can you bring the printer also, print it also and come? It's just, do we have to be so poor? It's just that you don't prioritize. In fact, often we feel they're deliberately under-resourced.
Sure.
Because, again, sometimes you often hear government says, let's get external experts. Often government tells bilateral donors, World Bank, ADB, IMF, give us technical assistance. Why we are not progressing on this reform, that reform is we need expertise. But is that true? Does this country lack educated people, professionals, academics, experts? Other countries headhunt our people and go. And take them, right? But what we've done is that you ensure that you can take your friends and relatives and others to key positions. So then, of course, your institution doesn't have resources. You haven't chosen people on merit basis. I used to say that I've often heard sometimes people say, no, Nadi, it's not corruption, it's lack of capacity of public institutions. I said that is corruption. Those who were in charge of that institution, why did they lead it to a lack of capacity situation? Why didn't they recruit the right people? Why didn't they advocate for resources? You know, we have international organizations for decades willing to provide support if they see the proper willpower, the people to implement it. It's not like, you know, they are there to get this kind of donations. I'm not talking about even loans, right? So that is so basically, because I think we are talking too much about the problem, I feel, and it seems that we don't want to end this conversation in an absolutely hopeless situation. And of course my team, we believe in being optimistic and having hope, otherwise we can't even do our job anyway. We believe that we still can make a change as a country. We need to find the space, and right now, in a weird way, since we've hit rock bottom, right, as a nation through the economic crisis, but when you have a dark cloud, there could be a silver lining, which is for us, from a cultural sense, after we've been, as TISL has been operating for over 20 years, but our colleagues who've been there throughout say the interest of people to fight corruption, which we saw post-economic crisis, was like never before. And that is great, because it was very difficult to get people on board, because there was this what we call the victim distance. They often distance themselves from the grand corruption, bond scam. People say, oh, you know, if we earn, we eat. Api hamba kalot, ne api kanne. But then they realize in the economic crisis, you are not even allowed to hamba karanna. Right, if the country's economy is crashing. So now people have woken up, but we need to keep this momentum. But there is a lot of interest. As a result, there is a pressure on the rulers, since especially now that they are going for the vote, to show some results in terms of fixing the corruption problem. I'm not saying now they are converted and they want to fight corruption, right? But because they want votes, and because people are asking for a system change, and people have a better, comparatively a better realization, and people still don't feel any improvement of their life. I know the money has come, people are like, in fact, several forums we were there, no, ordinary citizens ask us, can you, we need to know where the IMF the two installments went. Like, can we know? Can we audit? So that's very important. Then things like, how can we get the stolen assets back, right? Then secondly, now we actually have a very clear action plan to start the system change. That is through the governance diagnostic that was done in Sri Lanka by the IMF for the first time. And what I have here is what civil society led the governance diagnostic, and these documents are very complementing in nature. There is a very clear doable things, from, you know, bringing in the parliamentary oversight and taking away the minister's control, to setting up a proper controls into the procurement system, bringing beneficial ownership transparency. That is when you need to know who the real owners are in companies. That's where you hide corruption. You know, they're bringing this whole asset declaration system, transparency platform where people see about who gets the tax exemptions, taking away other laws like the strategic development project that are like pieces that are there to, you know, be abused, setting the SOEs in line. I mean, there is a list. They are not idealistic ones. They are doable. What you need is political will. I'm not saying we have it, but they are now under pressure, because it's part of it has now gone to the IMF agreement. If they want the next tranche, they have to do some of this. So now let's push for this. Voters ask for this.
Yeah, thank you for infusing the optimism into the conversation. Fabulous. Yeah, at least at the tail end of it. Manjula, when we speak about elections, we need to empower citizens to take action where leaders fall short. If we take jurisdictions like Switzerland, Bulgaria, they have this right to recall instrument, which is an instrument of direct democracy that allows voters to remove elected officials if they're not satisfied with their work. What is the feasibility of implementing a recall mechanism in Sri Lanka to improve governance?
Yeah. So now it is, I mean, so important to know about that as Sri Lankans. You know that the that very concept actually surfaced after the Aragalaya, because that at that time we know that the most of young people came forward and they asked some of component related to the direct democracy. According to the electoral history in Sri Lanka, actually there were two options related to this specific matter. Actually, I am not talking on the origin. I mean that the concept of recall. First I will touch the Sri Lankan context. Actually, it is by-election and referendum. Okay, because before 1977, actually we had the first past the post system. There's a very small constituencies, 160. Then actually it is very easy to hold by-election if there's, not wrongdoings, even wrongdoings, as well as actually if someone died or something happened, actually what we can do is holding by-elections. Okay. Accordingly, there were many by-elections in Sri Lankan history, but before, after 1988, actually, there were no by-elections, because the reason is actually under the Second Republic Constitution, we introduced the proportional representative system. Under the proportional representative system, they didn't remove that other part, that the referendum. Okay, referendum also kind of direct democracy component of under the direct democracy. We can say actually right to recall. Okay. You know that in that component, if you can read the constitutional constitution actually in between 82 to 86, all four constitutions provisions are talking on referendums. Okay, but under that very concept of recall, but we can say that actually in the global concept, as you correctly mentioned, there are some specific countries, Bulgaria, Switzerland, many countries are using that right to recall. What is right to recall? It is actually that recall is the power of the voters to remove elected representative before their terms expire. Okay, that is the concept. But you know that in the reviewing the all countries that have in the recall concept. Okay, even Switzerland, most of people are thinking that in Switzerland that MPs, members of parliament, can remove through a recall process, but it can't. Okay. Then even in Switzerland there are I think 6 cantons, not federal government. Okay, 6 cantons are available. Okay, that this specific recalls options, but not that in Switzerland also actually no one can remove parliamentarians under these options. That is how recall system is operating in worldwide. Most of it, my observation is that actually it is very difficult to remove parliamentarians. Very few countries are operating like that. Even in India, that Kerala and other states are using to remove municipalities, representatives of local government under the panchayat system even. Okay, but the change in system is that the percentage. What is the recall process? Okay, if we are talking about that, the recall process is that actually you know that the very first, if someone doing something wrong, actually as constituencies, we can sign a petition. In Switzerland, it is some cantons is 10%. Okay, in some counties, some states in India, it is 6%. Okay, that the percentage can be changed. It is variable. It is varies. But in that it is the first process. The second step will be it is that petition should be directed to the Constitutional Court. Okay, after the Constitutional Court made the decision, then we should go to a referendum. Under the recall process, the third step will be the conducting a referendum. That is the process. In Sri Lankan context, I don't think that it is very difficult to apply in this context actually. But as an election observer, my suggestion is actually in the nomination stage, our people, our voters can not try to recall, right to reject. Okay, we can choose people. I mean, we can see the list of candidates. Then it would be better asking the right. I mean, it would be better if we have in right now with very next elections. If we are not, I mean, if you are expecting me to tell something like Nadi, I mean, a positive something aspect actually, what we can do is actually as voters, they can choose the correct way, not try to recall, right to reject.
Right. Before wrapping up, Shihar,
Yes.
you can ask one question.
Okay, thank you. Nadishani, this is about, the people asked for change mainly because they thought the corruption was one of the key issues of this governance, right? And we saw the Aragale and, they were asking for, to bring back stolen money and, investigate this, arrest these people, punish them, right? What has happened since then? I mean, do you see any kind of changes happening on those demands?
Yes, so these governance reforms are what we call the anti-corruption governance reforms. So in terms of the progress, I would say that by default, because of the governance diagnostic that was carried out, but people had a role to play. The pressure on IMF to decide to do Asia's first governance diagnostic in the Sri Lanka program was because they saw the people surprising and they saw people saying that this is because of corruption. So they couldn't just come up with, have an agreement and only look at economic reform, ignoring completely what people said that this is a governance problem that caused the economic crisis. So then we have this action plan, and then as part of it, renewing the law. Because our law was outdated, the laws that there were 3 main laws at that time, so now they have been repealed and replaced by the new Anti-Corruption Act. So we can take it as one positive thing, but then again, people are wary of laws. I mean, just because, a lot of people keep asking, are we now great now that we have this law? But, we say, no, let's see, it's good to have the law, but it all depends on implementation, and we are yet to really see that. And secondly, another cry of the people, bring back the stolen assets. Now we finally were able to access a legislative framework that the government has drafted, because it's already that deadline is now the IMF has extended it to November to bring this law, which is called the Proceeds of Crime Law, to give us the legislative framework we need to recover assets that are stolen from our country and lying elsewhere. Now, this is a massive piece of legislation which we are trying to review. We've been pleading and asking the minister to give us a forum. We've gathered experts. We've opened it to the public also, anybody to please give their views. But also there are people who know this subject matter. There's a criminal angle, all of that. And we've been asking for a forum to give the feedback. We haven't got. I hope we will get. It's sad because the IMF and these parties get to sit, but the local experts and other stakeholders have been kept out so far. And one wonders why, no? Like, why? Why? We are only trying to improve the law. So this is where it is. But the pressure has to be kept by the people. Like that was said, in terms of has corruption reduced, or no, right? No, because we are still bringing up the framework, and there are many more governance reforms that has to happen to stop those leakages. There are those gaps where this big corruption happens, where people can sign agreements without the parliament seeing it, where you do massive procurement corruption. So we had to fix those, and the process is going. People will have to keep demanding while deciding that I have to also now stop contributing to corruption also, because otherwise the demand will still be there.
All right, thank you very much.
Add something to what she said.
Sure.
It's very good to have these new systems to be developed. But the problem is, whatever the system that you have, whether those systems are made use of and or whether those systems are implemented. But as far as the laws that are there in the country is concerned, I was listening to the gentleman who said about this recalling the members of parliament once appointed. Right? I wouldn't go that far. I'm being very practical. If the laws are applied on these parliamentarians properly, half of them will be behind bars. Why have another?
The existing law.
The existing law. Half of them will be behind bars.
Right?
So why go to the extent of recalling them? That will be another process of recalling them. Once they go to jail, that's the end of it. Right? Why are we making use of the system that we have at the moment? There was one person who was convicted after trial. 52 days of trial, he was convicted for asking for a ransom, not 100,000 rupees. I think 25 million bucks. He was convicted, but given a suspended jail term, and he's sitting in the parliament as a leader of something. Now there are so many people like that. Murderers, they commit murder, they come to parliament. I mean, where is the law in this country? The law is something that in this country that doesn't apply to the parliamentarians. That's where the problem is.
I'd like to move on to the closing remarks. It's almost 11:30. Mr. Puljai Surya, what are some of the concrete measures that the legal fraternity can take to further the separation of powers doctrine?
Well, separation of powers is one aspect of it. Well, one should not step on the other's toe. That's the whole issue here. But these are not rocket sciences. These are basic principles that are known mostly by the lawyers, but also the general public also have some understanding about it. I mean, in Sinhalese you call it ballage wade buruwa karanna yanna epa. The courts have to function as courts. The parliament has to function as a parliament. Somebody was heard to compare the order that was given by courts once with regard to the impeachment motion that was going to be tabled in the parliament. At the time, Mr. Lanka was the speaker. That is a totally different situation. There, the parliamentary proceedings were sought to be stopped by that court order. There never have been such an order given in the past. So as far as the current situation is concerned, the parliamentarian and the vituperations that have been made by such people against the judiciary is pathetic. It's pathetic. Unfortunately, all these statements have been made by lawyers. That is the most unfortunate part of it. From the most senior, 50 years plus, the other person maybe about, the minister maybe about 40 something, at least close to 40. Then another person, another minister also about that much of seniority. And the fourth person. I mean, if this is the kind of respect and the regard that the members of the legal fraternity sitting in the parliament have towards the judiciary, what would the common man on the road, what is the respect that he would have to the system, the courts, the judiciary? Now, whether it is a magistrate's court, whether it is the High Court or the Supreme Court makes no difference. But if they have the audacity and the guts and the courage to attack the Supreme Court when making determination on bills as required under the Constitution, and when making judicial orders, it can be right, because these are all human beings. They can be wrong. We may agree with some of it, we may not agree with some of it. But if that is the ruling, we have to accept it. We have to bow down as the ultimate statement on the pronunciation, what is being made by the Supreme Court, the apex court. You can't go beyond that. You can't revise that order. We have to accept it. The question is not whether it suits you or whether it is not suitable for you. That is not the criteria.
Thank you very much. Manjula, in this pre-election period, what is the way forward?
I will tell in simple manner actually that as voters, what they can do, only one thing. Actually, they should request sooner elections because it is constitutional. According to the constitution, they should conduct the presidential election. Then appeal to the people actually what they can do. Don't try to vote for the candidates who are trying to undermine the democratic culture, especially democratic institutions in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much. Nadeshani, what is the role of civil society in acting as a pivotal stakeholder in bringing forth change and anti-corruption?
There is a very important role in terms of being that the party that gives that knowledge, that empowers or capacitates citizens with information, with the concepts, with even to analyze the laws and simplify it. And you know, we do this bridging role between citizens and other stakeholders, like be it a public institution or the politicians. Sometimes it shouldn't have need be, but we are there to at least do that. Because see, it's not like every single person in the public sector is corrupt, or every single person, all the lawyers are corrupt, so even politicians. So it's really important, I think, even in terms of hope, to find out those one or two people even who really want to make a change and be a strength to them. And it's important to bring those like-minded people together. Civil society can do that. And it's such a, it gives you a lot of hope and encouragement and strength then to work together. And then you also have a collective. So civil society now need to start working together also and become a strong collective. And the key thing is, for any of these reforms, and even for free and fair election, to somehow make corruption more difficult, to ask for governance changes, we need to protect civic space.
Yes.
And there are many attempts to legally take it away from us, or by intimidation, fear, arrest, all of that, take it away, but take away the independence of the commissions. So that means civil society will have to continue to advocate, resist this, call it out what it needs to be. I mean, there is no space for any rest though, but also so that at least the people have the right information when they have to make that critical decision with regard to voting, but always be strictly apolitical though.
Fantastic. My final remarks to Mr. Chandra Jayaratne. How do we move towards ensuring good governance with a specific focus on the business community? You yourself were the chairperson of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce several years ago. The business community is a very powerful stakeholder in a country's economy, but they also at times opt to look the other way when certain decisions are being taken. They have the power to call the government out on its nonsensical decision making at times. So speak to us about that role.
I think you can't expect them, though they are now covered by the, they are also covered by the new act for the first time, so there is a chance. So I think there are two things. I would say the media and the civil society must work together to hold them accountable. I'll give you one good example. The trying to rush what the president today announced as that we have got out of bankruptcy. They have only one more thing to do, which will be signed soon. Now the signing soon, if we are going to surrender, we have already taken a significant part of the poor man's earnings by the EPF amount that has gone. Some of us who have calculated it, I think they have lost about over 40% of their future earnings has gone. They don't know about it. Now, nobody is telling them what they have lost. They don't know. They have, when they retire only, they will know. Now, we rushed that. We are rushing this. Now, will we rush the commercial one, where Ghana has just come? They thought that we have today, I think the reference was Ghana took 4 years, we did it in 2. But will we get the 37% that Ghana got as a haircut, or will we get 7% as Dr. Harsha De Silva has now calculated our macro bond will give? So I think to holding them accountable must be the responsibility of the civil society, join together with the media and utilize the fact that today corruption comes not only in the public sector but in the private sector.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratne, Mr. Upul Surya, President's Council, Ms. Nadishani Pereira, and Mr. Manjula Gajanayaka. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise and perspectives. Thank you for staying up until 11:40 in the night on a weekday to have these important conversations. Thank you also to my two colleagues, Shihar Anis and Niresh Eliathambi. What a fantastic conversation. Thank you for watching us. I'll leave you tonight with a quote from Charles de Gaulle, who said, "Politics is too serious a matter to be left to the politicians." Thank you for watching us. Good night.